What is up, Janksters? It's your boy Graham, also known as HamHawks42 on the internet, and today we're discussing something that is near and dear to my heart, and that is clone effects. So I really enjoy clone effects in general in Magic because they allow for some insane, weird action and some board states and synergies that maybe you didn't see coming otherwise. Also, in a lot of cool instances, they allow you to get multiples of effects onto the battlefield that you otherwise wouldn't. Most notably in Commander, because, you know, it's a singleton format, and so being able to copy something that you have is generally pretty good. But the reason that I want to talk about clone effects today is because we're discussing the clone effect that is at the rare slot in March of the Machine, which is C double. So this is an instant for 2 blue. This spell can't be copied. It can be countered just fine, but you can't copy it. Choose one. If an opponent has 8 or more cards in their graveyard, you may choose both. Copy target spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. Or create a token that's a copy of target creature. So I adore this card, and I'm going to find weird ways to abuse it. Don't you worry. I think this is going to be super duper fun because it allows you to, it allows you to do a lot. And on top of that, if you have that moment where your opponent has 8 cards in their graveyard, so if they have kind of like super threshold, and you can get access to both of these at instant speed, that is bananas crazy. And I can understand why C double itself cannot be copied, because otherwise it would literally be, it would be an instant that could go infinite with itself. That would be awkward, and I can see why Wizards would not want that to happen. So they kind of cut that off at the pass. You cannot target C double with itself. Or you could, but the effect would, or no, you couldn't. No, you can still target it, I think, but the effect would not resolve. Therefore, you wouldn't get a copy of it. In any event, it doesn't work. Copying C double with another copy of C double, or even with itself, which I think would otherwise theoretically work, you're not allowed to do that. So that's fine. So in this case, we have a 4-mana clone effect. Now, the reason that I talk about clone effects with this is because that's the floor here. So for 4 mana, we can create a copy of a token copy of another creature on the battlefield. And it's any token, it's any creature. It doesn't have to be one that we control. It can be one our opponent controls. As long as you can target it, as long as you can target it, you can copy it. So if your opponent has a Shieldred online and it is just eating your lunch, totally taking you down, and you do something about it, bam, C double. Your opponent gets an Atraxa online, draws a ton of cards, is just outvaluing you all over the place, bam, C double. You know, whatever the case may be, whatever's going on over there, or if your opponent drops, or if you already have an Atali online and somehow free cast, like, you could theoretically cast Atali, spin into C double, make another copy of Atali. Granted, the legend rule would apply, so you would only get to keep one of them. However, you could even keep the token, the other one would go back to your graveyard. If you spin into reanimation spell or another C double or something of that nature, just keep on spinning, baby. I think that possibility is disgusting, and now that I'm discussing it, I'm realizing I need to build that deck. That could also be incredibly powerful because there are other effects out there that, wow, okay, no, this has got me thinking. There are a ton of clones right now in Standard because every set, like, Wizards has this checklist that they're clearly going through when they create a new set. You know, we need good creature removal at 3 mana. We need, you know, a counter spell at 3 mana with some kind of set mechanic. We need a 6-drop green creature that gains you life upon entering the battlefield. One of the things that's apparently on their checklist is a 4-mana rare clone that somehow has the set mechanic. Like in Streets of New Capenna, there was the covert, I believe it was Covert Operative. It entered the battlefield as a copy of another thing, but it had a shield counter. I'm realizing I might be getting the name wrong, but it was a clone with a shield counter was the idea there. Then we had one of the prototype creatures in Brothers War. That card, or that set, had a prototype clone. So these, like, clone effects are very common. They're very, I don't know about ubiquitous, but they're kind of all over the place. The main reason that we don't see them more often is because they're very narrow. If you don't have a good creature online, or there isn't a good creature on the battlefield at all, a clone in your hand is useless. Like it's strictly, it doesn't do anything because there's nothing for it to copy on the way down. And so if it does have some base stats, sure, you get those, I guess, but usually that's like a 2/2 for 4 or whatever the case may be, so that's not worth it, you know? In this case, though, you have it at instant speed, so that's huge. I can't express that enough. I mean, to the point where if your opponent plays a bomb creature, you can respond by copying it with C double. And fun fact, you can copy it on the stack or on the battlefield, either way. So you can copy it on the stack, and then you will actually untap with it first, and therefore be able to attack with it first, unless it has haste, which is pretty neat. So I think the timing on this is very, very powerful, very, very important. And the fact that you could double 2 separate things. So in order for a clone to be good, it needs to be doing more than just being a 4-mana clone. Like 4-mana clones just do not move the needle at all. Like, cause if there's nothing on the board, they just don't. They're a dead card in your hand. And if there is something on the board and it's legendary under your control, you can't take advantage of it, you know, in most situations. So the vast majority of the time, it's just not worth it. The fact that this card, though, has other utility is really critical. I can't stress that enough. That's a big deal. You can also copy your opponent's spells. So if your opponent casts anything, your opponent can cast a Fable, the Mirror Breaker, they could try to hit you with Invoke Despair, and you could flip it around and copy their Invoke Despair, shoot it right back at them, and that, if that's lethal, their Invoke Despair would not resolve because they'd be dead already. So, like, this is a really interesting card. Is really what it comes down to. It's just a genuinely very interesting card. So I like it a lot. And on top of that, if you can get your opponent to have 8 cards in their graveyard, which is not hard, by the way. There are tons of ways to mill people out. Also, a lot of cards these days are trying to fill your own graveyard proactively. So if your opponent is taking advantage of that and trying to fill their graveyard up, if they're doing some kind of mill strategy, or if they're rummaging to find like valuable pieces, as a lot of decks do these days, this is going to be online very quickly. So when they try to play out a big Haymaker spell at the end of the game, you can throw down a C double. Not only do you get their big Haymaker spell, I mean, they still keep theirs. It doesn't counter it, but you get it as well. And then you also get a copy of the best creature on the battlefield. I mean, that seems really good. You also, because this is an instant speed, it can be done in the middle of combat as well. So if your opponent is attacking into you, they may think they have an empty board, then all of a sudden you have a copy of one of their things, you know, and it's blocking now for you. Like, that's pretty darn cool. Or they could do their combat math, assuming that, okay, I've got them dead, you know, as long as I can survive one more turn, their board's empty, I'll be okay. And then this can generate a threat out of nowhere that can end them and help you win the race. So I think that's fantastic. Also, this could, in a pinch, be used as a way to get around removal in kind of a fun way. So imagine this. Let's say pie in the sky, magical Christmas land scenario. Let's assume that your opponent has at least 8 cards in their graveyard. You have 1 creature online. Let's say it's Sheoldred, right? Okay, so we're dealing with a legendary creature on the battlefield, which usually you don't want to clone in that scenario. If your opponent targets it with like a Go for the Throat, you can cast C double, copy their Go for the Throat, and then make a copy of your Sheoldred. So the token copy of Sheoldred enters. You keep it, let the other Sheoldred go to the graveyard, fizzling their Go for the Throat. Your Go for the Throat also resolves and kills their best thing. So you didn't counter their kill spell, technically, but you leveraged it against them in a really cool way that they didn't, I don't know, and it did negate the value of that spell for them. Like, you didn't technically counter it, but I mean, you kind of did. So that kind of scenario is one that you might find yourself in. And C double gives you a lot of cool, interesting interplay. So I wouldn't be surprised if this actually does show up as like a 1 or 2 of in competitive standard decks, because it has a ton of flexibility, and given all the things you can do with it, it's actually reasonably costed. You know, you can negate, targeted removal. You can just hijack your opponent's best spells and just get ones for yourself. I mean, you can literally just take their turn as well. You know, if they try to throw out a huge bomb, you just get it as well. Honestly, and like, no matter what kind of bomb that is. So if they're trying to kill you with a spell of some kind, you're gonna get it first. So honestly, I think this card is nothing short of fantastic. I mean, we've come a long way from just clone, you know, Just a little 2/2, or I don't even remember if clone has stats. It might be a 0/0, but it enters the battlefield as a copy of a thing. I think its base stats are 2/2, but that's almost never relevant. But yeah, the 4 mana enter the battlefield as a copy of another creature on the battlefield effect. It's always fun. It's neat, but it's kind of weird and janky. The fact that this is instant speed and it has additional upside on top of that is just really what puts it over the top. I think this card is excellent. Yeah. So thanks so much for checking out this edition of the Overthinking MTG podcast. I do appreciate it. I hope you're having a fantastic day, whatever day it may be for you when you're listening to this. And yeah, we have more March of the Machine cards to discuss. So please like and subscribe on whatever platform you're using to check out the show. Know that I appreciate you, and I'll catch you on the next one.